FPB's Meet the Candidates. This Cable 10 series allows you, the voter, to hear directly from our candidates their views on issues that are important to our community. This is all leading up to the primary, which is happening now up until June 23rd. That's right, things are a little different this year. We're social distancing, so we're doing our interviews from different locations. This year, we took questions from our viewers through social media and through email, so we have a lot of interesting topics to cover, so we're going to jump right in. Today's guest is Rodney Williams, and he is running for mayor of Frankfort. Welcome.
Thank you, Cathy.
Yeah. Let's just get started, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why you have chosen to run for mayor.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks to the Frankfort Plant Board for giving the candidates this opportunity in these circumstances. I'm sure it's very challenging for your production and for disseminate the information that you'd like to. You can imagine it's very challenging for the candidates to be communicating with prospective voters, and this particular venue is a wonderful opportunity. So thank you for that. To introduce myself, again, my name is Rodney Williams. 48 years old. I've been a resident of Frankfort since the summer of 1997, so going on 23 years now. Have a wife, 3 children, 2 adult children, and one getting ready to start her senior year of high school at Frankfort High. Been in banking my entire professional career, spanning 26 years now, and I work for Whitaker Bank. I'm the Frankfort area president of Whitaker Bank. My educational background is in finance and economics. I graduated from Georgetown College with a Bachelor of Science in Finance and Economics. I primarily do in my work commercial and business lending. Probably 4/5 of my time is spent in that endeavor. Certainly with what has been going on the last few months with the pandemic, many people are at least somewhat familiar with the SBA lending programs, commonly referred to as the payroll protection program. That has consumed quite a bit of my life, sometimes 10, 12, 14-hour shifts, sometimes night shifts, depending on the volume of requests that we have. So campaigning for office during these last couple of months has been particularly challenging. But in banking, we're happy to provide those services, and I think the banking industry in general, I think, has done a great job keeping some of our small businesses open, giving them a lifeline, providing those services and lending functions that will allow them to open back up here over the next several days. From outside of a professional background, I'm a member of Capital City Christian Church. I'm a current board chair of Casa the Bluegrass. For those that aren't familiar with Casa and its program, Casa stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. We work with the family court systems. Casa Bluegrass covers Franklin, Anderson, Mercer, and Boyle counties. So I'm the current chair of that board. I'm on the board of ROSM, which stands for Resource Office of Social Ministry. Immediate past chair. That's a group of church congregations that started through the Franklin County Ministerial Association several years ago. But we work together to provide services that request for help with either rent, utilities, auto repairs, healthcare, things of that nature. I'm also on the board of the Franklin County Humane Society. Many folks in our community are familiar or have become familiar with the challenges that the Humane Society has here in Frankfort. We're about to, after the things come back to our new normal, we will start our fundraising efforts for our new shelter. So location has been decided on, plans have been decided on, a budget has been decided on. So that's an exciting thing for Frankfort and the services that the Humane Society provides to both the City of Frankfort and the Franklin County Fiscal Court. Also a board member of the Frankfort YMCA. So that gives you some of my extracurricular activities, some of the things that I've been involved in Frankfort over the years.
Sounds like a lot.
It is.
So with all of that experience, both professional and your extracurricular activities, how do you think you can transfer that experience to the role of mayor?
Well, I think the proper role of Frankfort's mayor, recall that we're organized in a city manager form of government. So we have a city manager, a professional administrator to facilitate the day-to-day operations of our city government. The appropriate role of mayor in our form of government is for that person to simply be the chairperson of the legislative body. From a legal standpoint, outside of declaring emergencies, there are things that come into play in an event of emergency, but outside of emergencies, chairing and leading the Board of Commissioners, leading discussions, conversations that impact the community, that's the appropriate role for the mayor of Frankfort. And my professional educational background, I think, would give the citizens a unique perspective, a unique skill set that can conduct business for the city of Frankfort and lead the legislative body. Again, I think it's the mayor needs to be someone that is willing to have discussions, conversations, develop relationships with not only just individuals within our community, but organizations and investors and other folks that are looking for opportunities to either bring jobs, capital investment, quality of life improvement, things that I think Frankfort really needs.
Okay. I just have to make a comment that it's obvious that you work downtown because we hear the train. That's super.
Yeah, I'm less than a block away from Broadway here at the Whitaker Bank Building on West Main. So yes, you can set your clock by the train schedule.
Nice. Okay, this year Frankfort's going to see quite a turnover in city leadership because we'll have a new mayor and we'll have at least 2 new city commissioners, if not more. As mayor, what do you see as the challenges and the opportunities for new leadership in Frankfort?
Well, primarily the opportunity is a new direction. I don't personally believe, or else I wouldn't be running. I don't personally believe that status quo is appropriate, nor would it be sustainable. So to me, there's a great opportunity for a group of 5 folks to come together with new ideas and create a new direction, based on what the community wants, based on what the community is going to vote for. And so, part of the responsibility of a properly run campaign for local office is to communicate exactly what your intentions are, and communicate how you would approach the role. And again, my approach would be to lead the discussion. So often in the past decades, our legislative body, for whatever reason, has chosen not to be more in a leadership role and leadership capacity. They seem to be more reactionary than necessary. And the consequence of that, unfortunately, is that we as a community lag behind others, some to our east or west. Georgetown, Shelbyville, for example, Nicholasville is another example, Richmond. All of these communities are growing and thriving, yet Frankfort, with all of its resources, is stagnant at best.
Yeah. So what would you consider the biggest issue facing city government right now, and how would you address it?
Well, if you'd asked me 3 months ago, it would be a completely different answer. But in response to this global pandemic that everyone is dealing with, obviously there will not be business as usual. In my opinion, in all the economic studies that I read constantly, this will be years into the future. You can't shut down 80% of the economy and then turn the key to open the door and then everything go back to normal. It's not going to happen that way. And therefore, over the next several years, in my opinion, there will be much more new challenges, particularly for city government, we have an operating budget of somewhere in the $32 to $33 million range annually. The biggest source of revenue, as most folks will know, is our payroll tax. And folks haven't been working, or if they've been working, they've been working from home. I've communicated with someone at the Department of Revenue a couple of weeks ago, where many state employees have chosen to claim their time either working from home, whether it be in Lawrenceburg or Georgetown or Louisville, and either pay their payroll tax in that community for the time there, or some of those communities don't have a payroll tax, so taking advantage of that. So I suspect that the impact on our operating budget over the next couple of years at least will be dramatic. And therefore, I think someone with more of a finance and economics background and financial management background and dealing with changes on the go, changes in what our expenditures can be, equipment purchases, even employment. Approximately 3/4 of our operating budget is tied into to the employees, and not only their salaries and pensions, healthcare, et cetera. So changing as our revenue changes, we will, as a board of commissioners, have to be able to respond appropriately and make some tough decisions, unfortunately, to keep services going as best as we possibly can. I distinctly remember being on the board. I did not mention it in my previous answer, and Cathy, I don't know if you were in our community at the time, but from January of 2005 through the end of 2010, I served 3 terms on the Frankfort City Commission, and I distinctly remember, 2000, that being including in 2008 and the financial crisis, me being in banking. I remember the end of the second term and basically all of that third term, dealing with changes in our operating budget. Our insurance premium tax was dramatically decreasing. Our payroll tax was dropping off. We had about a 22% change in either increased expenses or decreased revenue during that 2.5 year period. And we were able to function and overcome those challenges by doing just a couple of real simple things. As far as the taxpayer, the citizen knew, we increased our ambulance fees to match Medicare reimbursement, and we basically started going after a lot of employees and entrepreneurs, self-employed folks that weren't paying our payroll tax. So that was, as far as the citizens were concerned, that's about the only change during that crisis that they experienced.
Okay. Well, as everyone is saying during this time, we all have to pull together, work together to get through this. So do you think, because of the ongoing economic crisis that we're going to be facing, do you think this is a time to revisit the issue of combined city-county government to pool all of our resources?
Well, valid question. There are duplication of tasks, duplication of services to some degree. The city and county governments currently work through a number of the services they provide. Planning and zoning is one. There are some some mutual agreement with our fire protection, our fire departments. Our parks areas, they work closely together. The two governments do. So there are existing examples of those two governments working together. But as far as, is this the time to for the citizens to bring back the question of merged government? I don't believe so. Personally, I think, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, I think it could be an eventuality, simply because of, if nothing else, because of the pension situation. If that's not corrected, but changed dramatically, that our public pension system will basically bankrupt communities all over the Commonwealth. That one factor. Now Frankfort financially is in somewhat of a much better current state financially, with its level of reserves. but that, along with the financial challenges that we're going to be facing over the next several years, could very well force the hand of many municipalities across Kentucky and across the country, actually.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's look at some positive stuff going on in Frankfort. We have some exciting things going on downtown with Parcels B and C. With that, Frankfort has the opportunity to facilitate an economic stimulus, perhaps, especially at a time when it's needed more than ever. However, there is also the question whether the developer can find a viable way forward post-COVID. What should city government do, if anything, to reduce the developer's risk in an effort to make that project successful?
The first answer is we absolutely have to find a structure with tax increment financing, a TIF district, whether it be a local TIF or a state TIF. That's to be determined. But the volume or the amount of public infrastructure that this project is going to require, with the parking garage as well as the extension of Washington Street and everything that goes with those two expenses. I think Mr. Turner from CRM and his team made a very compelling argument to the City Commission. I think it was back in February. It's either February or January. Describing what their plans were. Some of those plans, I'm sure, again, I'm not the developer and I'm not involved in their conversations, but I deal with developers all the time professionally. I can assure you that redevelopment in Parcels B and C will look dramatically different than what he's presented to the community thus far, if a TIF is not in place. It's just they call it increment tax. The increment tax, and that's the term that folks use. But I think we have to remember that tax revenue does not exist today. So for someone to make the argument that, well, you're just giving away your tax revenue, well, there's nothing there to give away as of right now. You have to create the opportunity. You have to create the environment for those taxes to be in place. And then over a period of time, as the public infrastructure expenses are paid for, then the community, in this case, the City of Frankfort, the Frankfort County Fiscal Court, and I think the biggest winner in all of that would be the Frankfort Independent School District. That's when we will reap the rewards of not only the project itself and all the opportunities within that project, and it is pretty exciting what they presented, but just the tax base and the drawing of an increased population is what Frankfort should focus on at this point.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about business in Frankfort. What changes in policy would you support to make Frankfort more business friendly?
Another great question. You may recall, Cathy, several weeks ago, the Chamber of Commerce and KCDC and DFI sent out their candidate questionnaire, sort of doing their little grading system of whether or not Frankfort was business friendly, and how each candidate responded to those questions. Those responses have yet to be published. I plan on doing that myself, taking that upon myself, because it's some candidates got a little sideways on wanting to answer some of those questions, and I think they were all very valid questions. What, or just like you posed, what do you think you can do, or what would we change to make us more business friendly? And again, my specific and direct professional experience working in this community for almost 23 years, I can assure you that compared to communities that we compete with all around us throughout Central Kentucky and even down over the western part of the state, we are not business friendly. Compared to Georgetown, compared to Shelbyville, compared to Nicholasville, compared to Richmond, those communities are more business friendly. Their planning and zoning process is much different than ours. are the idea that an investor with a project can present that to a community, and it would take more than 90 days to 3 months to go through a zone change request and/or development plan process. That puts us at a distinct disadvantage, and that is happening in our community, and that's unfortunate. So what can we do differently? One of the things that I have proposed within our planning office, within the city's planning office, whether it be with a development plan, a business license request, or a zone change request, to have a 3 to 4 business day response time to the applicant to either this will work, or well, for us to make a decision, here's the process that you'll have to go through, and here are the concerns that we see on the front end, and actually have a more streamlined process to do that. And then you get into the actual planning commission itself, its subsidiary boards, architecture review board, BZA, things of that nature. Those, they've, even last year, excuse me, I distinctly recall one occasion where it was at least 90 days for one of those subsidiary boards to actually meet and have a quorum to make a decision. That's just not acceptable. And I realize that many of those folks are volunteering their time. They're not being compensated for it. But that would go back to the leadership of the mayor's role to identify and communicate and encourage folks that are either serving those roles right now, that it is vital to our community and is vital to how we compete. Frankfort has for so long has depended on being the seat of state government and all the benefits that come with that. We simply don't have that entrepreneurial spirit as a local government. We don't have the eagerness that is required to be a resource for some of the citizens, the investors, whether they're here in our community now or outside of our community looking to invest in our community. We simply don't have the attitude in place and the response time and the approach, if you will, to compete well and for whether it be for job creation or capital investment, for so many things that could dramatically improve our economic prospects as well as our quality of life.
Okay, well, you mentioned the ARB. What changes would you make if elected to improve the Architectural Review Board?
Well, the Architectural Review Board, there are specific, I believe there's 5 members, if I'm correct, if that board is at capacity, and there are the ordinance that created the ARB specifies some on what the backgrounds of those folks are. That can be somewhat challenging. So changing that to make that more open, more available to more people with different professional backgrounds. I realize that someone in with a background in restoration, for example, someone with a realtor's license, for example, all those are valid reference points, but they're not the end-all be-all to be able to respond to citizens when they're looking to improve the properties in the special capital district. So that could be changed, I think, significantly. Beyond that, the meetings themselves, if you've viewed them or visited or witnessed on the plant board on Cable 10, that some of those things are head scratchers, and that just the function of the meeting itself, who's in charge, what decisions they're making. One of the, and I apologize if this sounds like a criticism, I guess it is, but the ARB seems to make decisions many decisions that aren't really in their purview. And somehow the planning staff, as well as the planning commission, as well as the city staff, are allowing that to happen. And So I think focusing those board members on exactly what their role is, how to execute their role, and in some ways maybe look to change the makeup of the board as far as what those backgrounds are. And again, I think someone with a professional background like myself that is constantly interacting with folks throughout the community that are genuinely looking to improve the community, I think could be a big advantage for me to do that.
Okay. Well, earlier you talked about growth in Frankfort, and in our last city commission election 2 years ago, the candidates all talked about the stagnant population growth in Franklin County, and that Frankfort needs positive change to spur growth. Do you feel like the current city commission has made a positive impact moving Frankfort in that direction? And what changes would you make to spur growth?
No, the current board hasn't. Not that I can put my hands on or point to. Decisions made, processes changed to have a material impact on our population growth. Housing starts, and we'll use that data point as one example. Housing starts in the city of Frankfort and Franklin County in general. I think KCDC released some data December or January. They don't have it in front of me, but you might be able to refer to that later. But compared to, again, Shelbyville directly to our west, Georgetown directly to our east, and realize that Georgetown is a different economy with Toyota and all the things that are going there. But there is no excuse whatsoever that the city of Frankfort and Franklin County should not be reaping the benefits of the basically the carryover of population growth from Scott County. Scott County is projected to be at 100,000 residents before 2030. Think about that. I mean, they're 20 years ago, or actually 25 years ago, as Toyota was getting started, they were a community much smaller than Franklin County, and as is right now, they're getting ready to double us within 10 years. That's just not acceptable, and the community here in Frankfort shouldn't accept that. So that's the housing starts as one data point to prove that we're not doing what we need to do to make the city of Frankfort and Franklin County more attractive to families and employers, other investors. So what would we change? Again, going back to the planning and zoning, the planning office itself. I think Eric and his staff actually do for what they have available to them actually do a great job. I'm very, very pleased with their approach. And if you recall, I think it was 2018 when Eric was hired as the that used to be a planning director, but Cindy Steinhauser, the city manager at the time, got the board to change that to planning and community development director, which I thought was a great move, at least on paper. And I think Eric does a wonderful job, and his staff does a wonderful job. But there's probably 15, 20 different things that we can do within the planning office and staff to really prepare and be more of a resource for builders or investors, developers, than not more of a roadblock or an obstacle. That's because I can assure you, in the many folks that I deal with in that line of work, have often told, even those that live in our community, tell me repeatedly they'll never ever develop, they'll never ever build another home in the city of Frankfort. It's just, again, their experience was so awful, and the process was so awful. It just this is the consequence to it.
Okay. Well, we're running short on time, but I've got short questions for short answers. Do you support allowing chickens within city limits?
No, ma'am.
Would you support regulations on food trucks?
To some degree, yeah. I think having food trucks at various venues and events are great. Everyone has a great time with that, whether they're out the old Capitol lawn with the concert series or the last Friday of the month for the Odd Fellows. I mean, that's those food trucks, and even it it is a much smaller investment for the entrepreneur to prepare their food and sell their food. So so when you say do I support regulations, I don't know, but as far as what those specific regulations are, but I would do everything possible to encourage more and more of that.
Okay. Where do you stand on the bicycle ban at Leslie Morse Park?
You know, if I was on the board right now, I can't imagine I would have voted to do a permanent conservation easement within the entire park. I think this has been discussed at length, and my approach would be to create more distinctive markers between Fort Hill and the more historic aspects and significantly architecturally site within the park, and segregate that. But we need more walking and biking space within our community. There's no doubt about that. So although I understand the historical significance of Fort Hill and what occurred there and what that means to Frankfort as the capital city, a permanent conservation easement just doesn't seem to be the way to do it. I think we can work with the residents in Blanton Acres and Thornhill, those very significant neighborhoods in our community, and respond to their concerns, and do things with the park that doesn't create a situation where we want people not to visit that park.
Okay. Last question. Some of the candidates have not been responding to the questions the State Journal has been posting. If that includes you, why have you not taken this opportunity to make your views and ideas known to a wider audience?
That hasn't been me. I think I think we're at 17 now. I think I turned in the 17th question or answer to the 17th question on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. The only one that I did not have an opportunity to respond to due to things going on with my family and work was the one about the chickens in the city limits.
Okay.
So now I've answered that. So that's never mind. But to answer your question, it seems odd to me that, especially in these circumstances where where door-to-door solicitation is banned and we can't be knocking on doors, we can't be trying to communicate one-on-one with voters. It's very odd to me that a candidate wouldn't take those questions as an opportunity to communicate with the public and with the prospective voter, and relay his or her ideas. It's not just answering the specific question, which some of them are better than others, but that's fine. But the way you communicate, I think, is revealed in those responses. The way your approach to something that may be off the wall or may be facing everyone in the community, all that spectrum. But it's very odd, and you do it for free. That's the other crazy thing. I mean, you have a venue to communicate with voters for free, and for some folks not to take advantage of that is very very surprising.
Okay. Well, we're done. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and for you to look in your camera and speak directly to the voter and tell them why you're the best candidate and why they should vote for you.
Again, thank you, Cathy, and thank you for the Frankfort Plant Board for allowing us this opportunity in these somewhat challenging circumstances. And I'm glad that we were able to do this via Zoom. But of the 5 candidates that make themselves available to the city of Frankfort, again, I believe that I am the strongest candidate and the best candidate for the job, simply because of my professional educational background in finance and economics. I think in the world we live in today, that has dramatically changed in the last several months. The city of Frankfort will, over the next several years, will face some very, very real economic challenges that many that we cannot predict, and many that we can already foresee as far as our revenue sources. And having someone with some deal, in other words, over 25 years of financial management background, and working with entrepreneurs, nonprofit agencies, public entities, and managing budgets that are anywhere from $5 million up to $100 million. that is what I do every day. And also what I do every day is make judgment calls. I'm able to discern different levels of risk. I'm able to develop relationships. I'm able to communicate with leaders and other folks throughout our community. And I think that background will relate and to the job of Mayor of Frankfort. And I'm proud to be a candidate for mayor. My campaign website is williamsforfrankfort.com. If the voters would like to visit that for platform information or other detail, social media, Facebook page, Rodney Williams for Mayor, also has some of that information that you might be interested in. Again, our primary election is June 23rd. It is now less than 5 weeks away. I ask you to communicate with me and or contact me if you have questions. It's a very strange election cycle, but myself as a candidate, I will do everything I can to communicate with you and respond to any concerns or questions that you have. My telephone number is 502-319-4320. And again, I respectfully ask for your vote in the primary election for Mayor of Frankfort. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rodney. I appreciate your time, and I know our viewers do. Voting is a little different this year, folks, so be sure to keep an eye out for the changes in the voting procedure. You can go online to govoteky.com to request your ballot. And let's just start getting informed, because it is election season, and it's time to voice your choice for who's going to lead Frankfort. That's it for this edition of Meet the Candidates. We'll see you next time. Thank you.